Tim, your foundation has announced the Unknown and Unfinished campaign. What can you tell us about this?
Well, that is something that is near and dear to our heart because we believe it's one of the worst evils in the world. When you look at the world of trafficking and child exploitation, there's so many people that lives are at stake and lives are on the line every single day. And this really stems back to all the way to last year's campaign, the Unknown campaign, because of the over 50,000 boys and girls that their abuse can be seen in by law enforcement in images and videos, but yet there's over 50,000 that haven't yet been identified. And that's why we called it unknown. And so we have to be able to identify them through technology, through legislation, through law enforcement, through operations to identify them, but then to be able to rescue them. And so, instead of moving on to another campaign this year, we said, no, it is too important. Although we have made strides in Congress, we made strides in operations, we made strides with rescues, we made strides with identifying and technology. There's so many more we have to get to. And so that's why we called it Unknown and Unfinished, because we got to get to as many of these boys and girls as possible. And when we look at this scale, just so people can understand it, within the last 12 months, there's been over 500,000 unique IP addresses that have downloaded or shared images or videos of children under the age of 12 being abused. And we know
Wow.
that on 55 to 85% of those sharers and downloaders are also hands-on offenders, and your average offender has 13 victims. So when you do the math on that, and I'm not very good at math, I was homeschooled and dyslexic, right? But I know that it's a lot. I know that that's a lot of lives there at stake. That's a lot of boys and girls. I mean, all of these are under the age of 12. Like, what are we talking about? And yet, why it's such a big deal to us that want to talk, and I'm grateful to be able to share with you and share with other people, is because it's also something that's going under the radar that not a lot of people are talking about. This isn't something that's brought up on the news a lot. It's not something that's being shared. But in my opinion, it's one of the worst evils in the world, and it's also one of the fastest growing evils in the world.
Yeah. I want to talk more about the campaign, but I have to pause to ask you because, and I think you just spoke to it a little bit there at the end, with your fame, your celebrity, everything you've done, you could be doing anything with your life right now. You could really, truly be doing anything. And yet you've chosen a number of issues, but this being one of those pinnacle issues that you tackle. Why have you felt that it is so important to put your time, your resources, your effort, and energy into this?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it would probably stem back to when I was 15 years old and I was in the jungles of the Philippines, and I had the privilege of meeting an incredible young boy who was born with his feet on backwards. But because he was born that way, his village looked at him as less than insignificant, and they treated him as if he were cursed, and they treated him as a throwaway. But I knew that day that he wasn't a throwaway to God, and I just felt like God was totally pricking my heart and wrecking my heart, saying, yeah, Timmy, he's not a throwaway to me, but what is he going to be to you? Meaning, what are you actually going to do about it? And I couldn't even describe it, to be honest. I couldn't. It was just this feeling, this image, this vision about it. But what does that mean? And I guess if I could sum it up in a way, then it was, all right, how do I fight for the least, the last, the lost? How do I fight for the throwaways? How do we help them? How do we help them know their worth and their value? And so this was really like working in my head and my heart of how we do that. And then the first thing we did when I graduated from Florida was to start the foundation with the mission statement to bring faith, hope, and love to those needing a brighter day in their darkest hour of need. To really sum it up, to fight for people that can't fight for themselves. And when I wrote that mission statement, I just was thinking about that boy and all the boys and girls around the world like him. And then that led us into orphan care, into special needs ministry, and to hospital care, and to wish granting, and these different ministries. And through that, it led us into the fight against um, this horrible evil of human trafficking, and that led us into this child exploitation. And it really falls under the same category of fighting for people that can't fight for themselves. Why? Because every single person has infinite value and worth. Because I believe when King Jesus, who has infinite value and worth, went to the cross and was a ransom for me, and was a ransom for you, and was a ransom for every single person, and gave his life in exchange for us, that means that we have infinite value and worth. How can I say that? Well, how in our society do we know how much something costs? by what someone is willing to pay for it. For King Jesus to go to the cross to pay for my sins and your sins and the sins of the world, and to be the propitiation, which means payment that satisfies, he paid that price for us. That means the value and worth is infinite for every single life, and we have to do everything we can to protect them, to bring them out of this horrible evil and put them in a position where they can flourish, knowing their worth and their value and experiencing the faith, hope, and love that so many desperately deserve. And it's not something that we can do lightly. It's not something we can do slowly, because what happens so often, Billy, is we live on our timeline. What do I mean by that? Well, let me get it all figured out, and I'm going to have this job, and I'm going to retire. And after my retirement, I'm going to do a short-term mission trip, and then I want to help some people, and I do want to tithe, and I want to tithe along the way. But when I'm living on my timeline, how many people do I not get to? You see, one of the things we really believe is we can't live on our timeline. We have to live on their timeline. And so many of the timelines of the people we serve, some of them might not have tomorrow. Some of them, their tomorrow is going to be a horrible day. When we look at this evil of trafficking, there's some different reports that say your average girl will get abused 7 times per day. There's different reports on it, and it's hard to know exactly, but let's just say that's close to the truth. What are we talking about? How could I live on my timeline knowing that she has to handle that one more day? That's got to do something as an image bearer of our Creator, as someone that Jesus died for me to sit here and be comfortable while she is so uncomfortable. It should make me agonize. It should put a burden on me. And I also believe, Billy, that the burden that God has put on us for people, for hurting people, because we know that God is near to the brokenhearted. He told us that. And, I always share to our team is if God's near to them, we should be too. And that should give us a burden. It should put a burden. And I also believe that a burden is actually a blessing. It's a blessing that God would give us things we care so much about in our lives that would be a burden to us. It means that our choices matter, and that in trying to live it out, I believe that's the kindness of God, that he would let our choices of what we get to do for people and for him, they matter so much. And so I know that's a long answer to kind of get back to your question, but it is one of the greatest evils in the world, and we have a burden so that we wouldn't live on our timeline. We would live on theirs and do everything possible to get to him, to get to her, to get to that image bearer of our Creator, so they don't have to experience that evil one more day.
No, it's a great answer. I love that you really fully explain that, because I think a lot of people do not know about this issue. They've maybe heard it, but they haven't paid attention to it. And one thing I've noticed in covering a lot of these issues, when it's an ugly, difficult thing, a lot of people want to look away from it, right? That's the natural, I want to look away, I don't want to think about it. But as Christians, we're called to not only think about it, but to do something, as you were saying, about it. Talk a little bit about, obviously, last year's campaign, this current campaign, the finer elements of what you're accomplishing and what you have accomplished. Help people understand. I mean, hundreds of children have been rescued as a result of the work that the foundation is doing. Talk a little bit about what has inspired you most and what has unfolded in that regard.
Well, I would say probably what has inspired me most has been the lives we've been able to get to and the lives we've been able to touch with our amazing partners at law enforcement and other nonprofits, because one of our non-negotiables is that there's power when we come together. Because we don't believe that we can change the world, and I don't know how much you could, but I guess what, if we partner together, I bet you we could do more. And if we bring more people to the team, I bet you we could do more. And so we want to rally people together to be on the same team, united, and trying to stand up for what's right and trying to stand up for people. And one of the things that holds us back from working together is because many times I believe that the credit is more important than the mission. And we want to be the opposite. We want to put the mission above the credit, because there's only one person that deserves credit, and that's King Jesus. And we need to be on mission for him. And so one of the things that's been really inspiring to me is to see the lives that have been changed through the amazing people that have rallied together. So many people have come together, whether that's been operations with law enforcement from dozens of countries, whether that's been nonprofits coming together. It's been so many amazing people that we've been able to see, and then to be able to see hundreds and hundreds of lives that have been able to be changed from all over the world, from locations in our backyard, in all where we live, This isn't something that is just in a third world country. It's in our backyard, yours and mine, where we live. And I think that's important to realize. And it's important so that we do, like you said, take off these blinders and the goggles that we're looking through and see the reality, not so that we're overwhelmed, but so that we would do something, always remembering that we get to serve a God that's already won for us. So we're not fighting for victory, we're fighting from victory, for the lives that Jesus went to the cross for. And I think it's important because that helps us from being overwhelmed and daunted by the amount of evil to remembering what our God has already accomplished for us. And so that we stay encouraged, stay motivated, even knowing we're going up against one of the greatest evils in the world.
Has there been a specific story, and I know this is probably a hard question because there are so many stories that you're encountering as a result of your work, a child, an individual, maybe a circumstance that has stuck out to you as one that you can't shake or one that has moved you in a particularly deep way?
I would say there's probably, oh gosh, I would say there's probably been hundreds that have really wrecked me. But probably one of the first ones that I would say is there's an incredible young girl that I've had the privilege to be around many times, and we have the privilege to be able to care for. And her story is a horrific story. Her courage is unmatched by many, and what she has overcome after years and years of being abused and sold by the people that were supposed to love her, the people that were supposed to teach her faith, hope, and love, the people that were supposed to protect her were the first people to sell her, the first people to abuse her, the first people to hurt her. And just getting the privilege of getting to know her and just loving her and seeing her blossom. And then before I testified to Congress this year, she went to some of the team and said, I want to share a message with Timmy. And the night before, the team sent it to me, and it was a voice note, and it was this incredible young girl's voice note. And she was just sharing some really sweet things. And at the end of it, she was saying, thank you, because no one has ever spoken up for us that I've ever heard. My whole life, no one's ever spoken up. And I was just thinking, man, I've done so little. I've done pretty much nothing. You're the incredible one. You're the courageous one. Man, I just played a silly game trying to put a fake pigskin inside a rectangle, inside another rectangle. You're the hero. And stories like that remind us what matters. And it's just so easy in life to forget what matters. It's so easy in life to forget. One of the things that I'm convicted and reminded of often is, man, my energy and effort and passion for a game, let's just take the game of football, man, I loved it. I was passionate. I was willing to sacrifice. I played. I gave up vacations. I gave up off days. I gave up the food I wanted to eat. I trained. I played with broken bones. I gave up so many things. Why? So that I could be a little bit better in a game, so I could make a team. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying when you put that in comparison to to the effort, intensity, and focus I've had for hurting people, man, I hope it's so much greater. But yet when I look back at what my greatest strain has been for, so many times it's been for a game or something that doesn't matter. And man, I hope when my life is over that my greatest energy, strain, passion was for things that really are going to last, things that are going to last forever. My wife just wrote a book titled A Crown That Lasts, and that's such a reminder to me. She got to wear a very pretty crown as Miss Universe, but that she had to give that away a year later. She had to hand that and put it on the next girl. So was she really living for a crown that's going to last, or a temporary one? And I'm so proud of her for that accomplishment, but I'm even more proud that she's running after crowns that are going to last in her relationship with Christ and her love for hurting people and to care for them. And I just think it's a reminder to all of us, and myself included, because how many times have I missed the mark thinking, I need this, I want this, I should have this, but yet so many of those things just don't matter. And they don't last, and there's no significance in them. And yet I've spent so much time and energy in my life running after those things. And I hope with my time going forward, I would run after the things that truly are going to last, because they truly matter, because they're for things and people that are near and dear to the heart of God.
Yeah, and that is so powerful, and everybody can relate to that. We all struggle with that, right? The temporal, the here and now, going for those things, and yet here you are doing that with unknown and unfinished. Where can people go if people are listening to this or watching it and they're thinking, I want to be involved, I want to help? How can they get involved and help?
They can go to the timtebowfoundation.org and they can check it out. And if they want to be involved, man, that would be awesome, and we would love it. We want to be on the same team. But I would also encourage, you don't have to join us, but I do believe there's some place for you to join. There's some place for you to make a difference. For every single one of us, there is a place that we can step in, we can stand up, we can fight for those that can't fight for themselves, we can love those that the world hasn't loved, we can care for those that are starving for hope. All of us have the chance to make a difference. Why? Because we serve a big God, and our God has given us purpose. As long as we have breath, we have purpose. What does purpose even mean? The reason something is done, used, created, or exists. And we are here for a purpose. And that purpose isn't just about us. Yes, we get to be part of it, but the purpose is greater than us, to be able to make an impact in the world. And I just believe that every person listening, I hope that they know that they do have purpose, that their life has such value and significance, and they would use that for something bigger than themselves.
Well, I love that, and the campaign is unknown and unfinished. Appreciate your time today.
Oh man, so appreciated. Thank you so much for caring about this. Thank you for not looking away, and thank you for being willing to talk and bring this to the world. Very grateful, Billy. Thank you, man.